Like it or not, there's gonna come a day when your boss says,
Oh my god, we should create a command line interface developer tooling application.
A what now? What tooling interface command developer application?
you know, the JavaScript and Node.js based CLIs, the command line interface applications for developer automation.
Oh, so you mean a CLI? Why didn't you just say it like that?
Well, I tried. And when that day comes, you'll probably also think,
But how do we make a CLI?
introducing NodeCli.com. It's how you make a CLI. Hello there, I'm Awais and I've created hundreds of open source softwares and developer automation tools used by millions out there. And in this step-by-step 100 video course, I want to teach you almost everything I know about creating CLIs and automation software. We'll start by learning what is Node.js and the Node.js fundamentals. I'll teach you how to install and manage different versions of Node.js for different projects. And then we'll quickly jump in to start creating your first automation CLI project. That's not all. You are also going to publish it for everyone to use, even for the people who are sitting in the outer space.
Will you teach how to create node modules?
Are there any production-ready CLI projects?
Yup, literally everything you need to know to start creating awesome CLI projects. And in this course, you are going to be building more than 20 projects completely from scratch. We are also going to do a production-ready CLI project, a CLI that can create CLIs. It's going to be absolutely amazing. You see, making CLIs and automating your work has always been tough. Even today it is.
Welcome back to part 7 of RTTA part 4 on how to exit Vim.
But NodeCli.com is simple. In here, I take what you already know, that is JavaScript, and turn it into a skill of creating automation CLI tooling. This course is built around the idea of minimum effective effort.
Minimum effective effort?
Minimum effective effort?
Minimum effective effort?
Oh geez, yes, minimum effective effort. It's when you spend the least amount of time to produce most effective work. It's like doing more with less. In this course, I'm going to teach you how to quickly prototype a CLI to automate literally anything. You see, if you are spending more time creating the automation software, wouldn't you rather go ahead and do it manually?
That's what I've been doing my whole life.
Oh yes, because creating automation software is so damn hard. Not with NodeCli.com. This course is a whole new workflow of coding, publishing, and maintaining your CLI projects to automate anything with Node.js and JavaScript. I'm going to teach you literally everything I know. You just sit back, relax, and say,
Whoa!
You have been waiting for this for years.
I've been waiting for this for years.
I have been waiting for this for years.
So what are you waiting for? Hop in or subscribe for free and I'll send you the first hour 12 videos of this course completely free on me. Let me help you do more good, automate your work, create more automation projects that you can open source to build excellent portfolio, and become a senior where you can demand more salary for a skill like this. Let's create your first CLI, or 20th, but this time much better. Believe you me, by the end of this course, you'll feel like a hacker straight out of a Hollywood movie, doing bunch of chores on a press of a button and whispering, I'm in. Well, I am in. But the question is, are you in? Sign up at NodeCli.com and I'll see you there. Hey, hello everybody. I am Ahmed Awais and we are going to be talking about Node.js and CLI automation. Before we start though, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I am Mr. Ahmed Awais, Mr. Ahmed Awais on Twitter. I share a lot of my developer tips on my Twitter account. I've created a course called vscode.pro, the VS Code Power User course, where I teach you how to use your own code editor in a very powerful and power user way. Because as a developer, you spend like 80% of your time with your code editor. It's only fair that you learn it well. And now I'm teaching Node CLI automation. You see, I love to create automation tools. This is one of the best perks of being a developer, that you can automate a lot of your grunt work and do more in less time and impress your manager or help the community while at it. As a developer, I have built hundreds of developer automation tools used by millions of developers out there. If you go to my GitHub profile, you can see that I've created hundreds of open source projects. And a lot of these projects have been developer automation tools. And that is exactly what I'm going to teach here. I'm going to teach you the minimum effective effort that you need to put in to create Node.js JavaScript based CLI automation dev tools. So you are not going to be wasting a lot of time figuring out how to automate something. You will be actually building this production ready dev tools that you can open source, maintain, so that you can improve workflows for not only yourself, but also for a lot of developers in your community. I'm actually really excited. I can't wait to try out what the developers who are going to take this course are going to build. Talking about why I am choosing Node.js and JavaScript to build CLIs, I think one of the biggest reasons for using Node.js is NPM. So NPM is the Node package manager. You see, all of these different languages have package managers, but Node package manager, the NPM JS repository, is quite different. The difference is actually in the numbers. For example, just last week there were 20 billion, that is billion with a B, 20 billion downloads. And over the month, there were 81 billion downloads of these packages. So the JavaScript and web community is huge. People want to install, people want to use what you are going to build. If we go in the CLI category, you can see there are like 853 pages with 17,000 packages created as of now. This is a huge opportunity for you to build a brand, a portfolio for yourself, and to help your community as a developer. I love CLIs. For example, wherever I am, I just type WTHR in my CLI, and it kind of gives me a quick weather update on what the weather looks like, for the next couple of days. Or let's say nowadays I want to track the coronavirus disease. So I type corona and I limit the results to show me only the top 10 results. And then I sort it by the active cases. I press enter. Here's a nice welcome header. Here's the information that I sorted this data by active cases. As you can see, this is a nice UI-like table inside of the terminal with the top 10 countries with most active cases sorted accordingly. This is exactly what you are going to learn in this course. You are going to learn how to build production-ready developer automation tools that you can use right here in your terminal. There are a lot of advantages of building tools like this. For example, my Corona CLI project is about 2 months old. There are 1,500 stargazers, 14 contributors, 51 different versions released, and 155 commits. This is one of the projects that has been trending on GitHub for about a week or so, and I was ranked as #1 trending JavaScript developer worldwide, which is huge. So if you want to become a hireable developer, if you want to help the community, if you want to automate those boring tasks that are just so repetitive that you cringe at everything when you do it, join me in this course and learn exactly how, in a step-by-step way, you can build automation tools by yourself. In this course, I'm going to be using Node.js and JavaScript. So what is really Node.js? Maybe you've heard about it before. If you go to nodejs.org, you see that Node.js is a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome v8's JavaScript engine. What does that really mean? Let me show you. I'm going to right click here and then inspect. And then I'm going to go inside console. Inside your browser, there's a console where JavaScript is running. Let's create a square function. Const square, where x is our argument and x is going to multiply itself in return. Now when I use square and give it a value 10, it becomes 100. You see, because this is our web browser, we are able to run JavaScript here. What if we wanted to run JavaScript on a server? Or let's say on the backend. For example, here is my terminal. I'm going to zoom it a little. Just assume that I have Node installed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to initiate the Node REPL. REPL is read, evaluate, print, loop. I'm going to type Node and press enter. Right now I'm inside the Node.js runtime. I can basically write all of the things that I did here in the JavaScript language and it would just work. For example, let's just copy paste this thing, the square function here. And now I'm going to use this function sq10 and it is going to give me the value of 100. You see, I'm able to write JavaScript code on a terminal where generally you use the bash language. This is amazing. Node.js has enabled me to write JavaScript code on a server inside my terminal. So this is Node.js. It's a JavaScript runtime. You can write JavaScript based code wherever Node.js is supported. On a server, on a backend, on a small Linux device or whatnot. Without Node.js in my command line, I had to write shell scripting. For example, something very similar and benign like determining the size of a file. The code for that looked like this. And this is not really the kind of code I wanted to write. You see what this weird if and else check look like? Or what is this double bracket thing and what is this hyphen and not null or whatnot? So I just wanted to use JavaScript. As a web developer, I wanted to use JavaScript wherever I go, both on the front end and both on the back end. Let's try and execute the script. So file size, and I'm going to get the file size in bytes for this index.js file. It is 405 bytes. If I write this same code in Node.js, it is going to look quite familiar because we are using the JavaScript language. I've taken the file system API, created a function, it takes a file name, and then I'm using a statsync function to get the stats about this file, which I am console logging here. If we run this script, it's going to be node 01 index and it's called file size.js. And there you go. Again, it is saying 405 bytes. So both node and shell kind of run and result into similar things, but this code, this part of the code, which is written in JavaScript, is quite more familiar as compared to what you would see in a bash based code or shell scripting, if you will. Let's go to the About page of Node.js and study a little bit more about what is Node.js. Node.js is an asynchronous and event-driven JavaScript runtime. Node.js can do a lot of stuff in an async fashion. For example, here's a sample code that creates a server and returns hello world. Right? Now you can create many connections that can be handled concurrently with the server. I'm going to copy paste this same code in a file called index.js. One more thing I have added here is a count, so I can keep the count of the number of visits that this server is going to have. The API is quite simple. From the Node internal standard API, we are requiring the HTTP module. From HTTP, we are creating a server that can receive a request and provide you with a response. This is actually going to create a server which is going to be listening on the port that we defined with the host name, that is localhost, up above here. And when we create a server, I actually count each visit and console log it. Then I respond with a status 200, that is everything is okay. And I respond with a plain text content type. And at the end, this server is going to respond back with hello and user agent. Hello user agent. And user agent is going to be the browser we are going to use to browse the server. So how about we go ahead and run this server? For that, I'm going to write node, and it's inside this 01 Node.js folder, index.js. And there you go. The server is running on my local host at port 3000. Let's go ahead and open this thing. Since I'm browsing it with Macintosh, Mac OS, Chrome, it is basically telling me this is my user agent, and it is saying hello to my user agent. Let's go ahead and reload our site a couple of times to send a couple of different requests to our server. As you can see, there have been about 10 visits to our server, and it's quite fast. We can also use something like Postman to send a request to our server. Postman is where you can send multiple different types of requests to a particular server, a particular URL. And I'm going to send a GET request to our server, and it is going to respond with hello and the user agent, which is going to be Postman runtime, which is amazing. And we just got another visit from Postman. Now I want you to look at this particular timestamp so we can see how long it is going to take us to send multiple requests to this server and how fast it is. I'm going to press Command Enter to send a couple of requests again and again. And we are going to just see what the kind of time it takes. I'm going to send multiple requests by pressing Command Enter. 6 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds. So the time has actually improved. I believe there is some sort of caching going around here. What if we try to load test this server? I know it is an extremely simple example, but what I can do is, let's exit out of here. I'm going to use a load testing library, which you can find on NPM called load test. I'm going to send 10 concurrent requests with 100 requests per second to our particular server, right? This is a huge load of requests. Pressing enter, and now these requests are being sent to our server. We can verify this by looking at these requests right here. As you can see, this is growing very quickly. We are receiving like what? More than 1200, more than 1800 requests and whatnot. Take a look at the scroll bar here. I'm getting hundreds of requests per second, and 10 of them are concurrent requests which are at the same time. So one would think that our server should have slowed down by the amount of server requests we are getting right now. Let's go ahead and try to send our request through Postman again. 10 millisecond. Take a look at this timestamp. 5, 5, 4, 4. It's still quite fast enough. I know this is not a really good load test, but as you can see, I've already sent what, 9,000? Yes, 9,000 requests to this server, and it hasn't slowed down the time one bit. So this is how powerful Node.js is. It allows you to do a bunch of stuff in an async way without overloading your system. And all of this is basically explained below here. Now let's see a couple more things about Node.js. For example, there's governance. Node.js is governed by two top-level committees, the TSC, Technical Steering Committee, and ComCom, the Community Committee. I am actually one of the 9 members of the Community Committee of Node.js. So you know you are in good hands. Now before we go ahead and download Node.js, I want to talk a little bit about how Node.js different versions are released. The release cycle of Node.js. So there are a couple of things that you need to know about Node.js. At one particular time, there are 3 different versions of Node.js which you should care about. One of them is called maintenance LTS, active LTS, and then the current version. So the current release is actually the release which is still getting all the major updates, and for each breaking API, for each breaking major version, we get a new version. So right now, as you can see, the current version of Node.js is version 14. And the end of life for this version is going to be in 2023. And then there are 2 LTS versions. By LTS, what we really mean is long-term support, which typically guarantees that the critical bugs in the LTS versions will be fixed for 30 months. If you're running a production application, you should be at least using the maintenance or active LTS release versions. But what is the difference between active and maintenance release version? What does this really mean? To explain all the 3 different versions of Node.js, I've created this extremely simple explanation. In the current version, you get the breaking new changes. New changes that kind of break the previous API without any sort of fallback. So you need to take care of it before moving to a current version. And when we talk about long-term support versions, the active LTS version gets non-breaking new features, the new changes which are not going to break your code, plus the bug fixes. Whereas the maintenance LTS only gets the bug fixes and no new changes. Right now, the version 10 of Node.js is in the maintenance LTS status. As you can see, this version was moved from active LTS to maintenance LTS around on 19th May 2020. And the end of life for this version is going to be 30 April 2021. And right now, version 12 of Node.js is in active LTS. So let me summarize all of this information. At the time of recording this video, version 14 is the current version, and it is still getting the new and breaking features added to it. Version 12 is the active LTS. It is getting the new features and bug fixes. Only these new features are the features which are not going to break any API. Whereas Node.js version 10 has the status of maintenance LTS, which is only being maintained to fix critical bugs. It is my recommendation that you use the stable version, which is the active LTS version, or the current version. Head over to the download section of Node.js, and you can see both the LTS and the current version of Node.js. And you can find installers for Windows, macOS, Linux, and all sorts of other binaries. As we discussed, the current version right now is 14.4.0, whereas the LTS version, the recommended for most users version, the stable version, without any breaking API changes, is 12.18.1. This download also includes NPM, the Node Package Manager, 6.14.5 in both the cases. There are several ways to install Node.js. One of them is to go to this download page, pick your OS, and download the installer, and finally install it. You will get the Node.js installed with NPM in it. This is generally not considered a good enough practice because Node.js is always getting an update, and you always have to kind of juggle through different Node.js versions and different projects. You need some sort of a Node version manager where you can easily switch between LTS, the stable version, to current version, or move back to maintenance LTS release or whatnot. And there are a couple of solutions out there in the community just for that, for managing Node.js version. A couple of weeks ago, when I asked the community on Twitter, how do you install Node.js? With this poll, about 500 developers responded that 75% of them use NVM, the recommended Node version manager. Whereas there are other options, for example, ASDF, Node-env, and N. From this poll, it looks like that after NVM, N is probably the most used option by developers. From here on out, I'm going to review all of these version managers, and then I'm going to recommend one of these to you. First one obviously is going to be NVM, the Node version manager. As you can see, there are like 42,000 stargazers of this project, and this is a really phenomenal project. But if my recollection of loss isn't misleading me, NVM was probably the first or the most known version management system for Node.js. If you go down here and click on installing and updating, there are generally two steps to installing it. You basically download its binary and run it, and then you have to add these particular lines in your bash profile or zsh profile. What this basically does is, whenever you open a new terminal window, it loads NVM for you. But what does NVM really do? For that, let's go head over to usage. With NVM, you can actually use commands like nvm install node, and it will go ahead and install the latest version of Node.js. Or you can install a particular version by saying nvm install the node with version 6.14.4. Maybe this is the particular Node.js version which your particular app architecture requires. And then you can easily switch between different versions of Node.js by using nvm use node and then specifying the particular version. You can also define a node version in your project by using this dot file. It's called .nvmrc. This file actually contains a node version number. For example, you can echo 5.9 in a .nvmrc file. So head over your project and enter this command in your command line. What this will do is it will create a file called .nvmrc with 5.9 inside it. Let's go ahead and try it. I'm inside the root of this particular project, and I'm going to paste that particular command and press enter. This command went ahead and created this .nvmrc file with the node version of 5.9 inside it. Now, if I had installed nvm inside my computer and I used something like nvm use, my node version would switch to 5.9. Similar to what is depicted here, it will start using Node.js version 5.9 for that particular folder. You can actually, echo a different version of nvm, and Node would start using that particular version using nvm use. Or if you don't have that particular version installed, you can enter nvm install to install that version. While nvm is a great project, I generally don't use it because it slows down my terminal quite a bit. You see, if you go to this installation instructions again, remember when you have to add this particular script? What this particular step does is it runs nvm every time you load your terminal. And it sometimes takes like 2 to 3 seconds or up to 5 seconds to load a particular script, which is just not acceptable for me as a Power developer. So I went out to the community and started searching for more solutions. There were definitely more developers concerned about how slow NVM is. And I ended up with this particular solution called Node.env. It is quite similar to NVM. Let's see how it works. You can install it with Homebrew in the Node.js, or with curl, just like NVM. And then you can use Node.env to install or list all the different versions of Node.js. For example, Node.env install 0.10.26 would install this particular version of Node.js. And this is an excellent project that you can explore. Another option available is called ASDF. ASDF is an extendable version manager, which is not only Node specific, but it comes with plugins for Ruby, Node.js, Elixir, Erlang, Python, and whatnot. I've used ASDF for a couple of years without any problem at all. For learning more about ASDF, let's head over to their documentation. So ASDF allows you to manage multiple runtime versions with a single CLI tool. And it works with whatever favorite language you have. If you click on the Get Started, I'm on macOS, and my favorite way of installation is Homebrew. It is going to give me the instructions to install the dependencies and then install ASDF. The problem with ASDF is you are again going to have to add another asdf.sh file that will be loaded every time in your bash profile every time you load your new terminal. While this is not as slow as NVM, it is definitely a little bit of a concern for me. Now head over to All Plugins menu. And in this plugin repository, you can see that ASDF version manager can be used to manage the versions of all these different things. For example, if I just search for it, there's Python, there's Ruby, and definitely there's Node.js. Let's open this ASDF Node.js plugin. Installation process for ASDF Node.js is quite pretty simple. You can basically, after installing ASDF, tell it to install this plugin. ASDF, plugin add, Node.js from this particular URL. And after that, you can start installing whatever version of Node.js you want. Moreover, ASDF also allows you to automatically switch different software versions using the .nvmrc, .node version, or .tool versions file inside the root of your project. So far we have reviewed NVM, the Node version manager, which is one of the most popular choices for Node version management, only it is a bit slower, which is not something I want. And then there are two good options, Node.env and ASDF with ASDF Node.js plugin. While you can use any of these tools, there's one more tool I want you to look at. And from my Twitter survey, this was the second most popular tool being used by developers. As you can see, it has about 13,000 stargazers, which seems so. If you take a look, it has about 13,000 stargazers, so it is quite much popular. It is another Node version management tool and is actually the tool that I personally use for managing my Node version. While I have used ASDF Node.js for quite some time, I've recently switched to Node version management with N. And there are a couple of reasons why. N is a Node.js version management tool with no subshells, no profile setup, no convoluted API. It is just really and extremely simple. Yes, it has some ins and outs, but for a basic use case for Node.js version management, I really like it. So how about we go ahead and set this thing up? If you have Node or npm installed, you can just use npm to install N. npm install -g for global and then N. If npm is not available, if you haven't downloaded Node at all, you can use curl and then run it. Or you can use my personal favorite tool called Homebrew to install N. One more step that I would want you to take a look at is avoid using sudo for global installs and whatnot. When you're installing global modules, Node.js modules, you keep getting these permission errors. You have to run sudo npm install or whatnot. To avoid those, you can actually run these particular two commands to own the folder of where n is going to install your node modules in those versions that n manages and different Node.js versions. And then if you want, you can also take ownership for all these installed destinations as well by running this particular command. So how about I go ahead and review this particular node version manager so you can understand it a little better. So I'm in my terminal. By the way, I don't use the official macOS terminal that comes with it. I use item2. You can go to item2.com and basically download this awesome macOS terminal emulator. If you go to the features tab, you can actually go ahead and take a look at all the advanced features this item2 terminal emulator has that the local macOS official terminal just does not have. For example, the ability to split panes in hotkey window, translucent windows, and whatnot. So let's head over to item. Since I already have n installed, I can actually type n with capital V to see the version of n I have installed. If you type n help, you can see all the commands that you can run in this tool called n. By typing n latest, we are going to be installing the latest or the current version of Node.js. Let's try it out. N latest. It went ahead and installed the version 14.4.0, 14.4.0, which is actually listed as the current version of Node.js. Since latest is an easier term to remember, it is calling it the latest version of Node.js. You can also type n current to install the current version of Node.js. One thing you might have noticed that it is not installing anything for me. It just switches to a different version of Node.js for me. And to use the stable version, I can definitely call it in LTS, which is the version 12.18.1, just as listed on the official website of Node.js. How I remember these two things is that there is a stable version without any breaking API changes, and then there is a current version with all the new features and breaking API changes. So whenever I want to switch to these different versions, I type n current, and it switches to the latest available current version, or n stable, which switches to the active LTS version. If I want to switch to any particular version of Node.js, for example, let's say I want to go to the maintenance version of Node.js, go to releases. I want to go to this maintenance LTS version, which is version 10 of Node.js. For that, I'm going to type in 10. And this is going to go ahead and install the version 10 of Node.js, the maintenance release of Node.js. So there you go. Right now, I'm using Node.js version 10. And I can actually prove that by typing node-v, and I'm using version 10. Now, if I switch to ncurrent and run the command again, I'll be using the Node.js version 14, the current version. I can again go back to Node stable version. Let's type node-v, and now I'm on Node.js version 12. See how easy it is to switch between different versions of Node.js by this node version manager called n. It makes it super easy. Just go to a particular folder and whatever Node.js version you want to use, just type it name. For example, I want to use Node.js 6, just n and then space 6. It is going to go ahead and install that particular version of Node.js for me. And now that I have a couple of Node.js versions installed, how about I switch between these quickly? If I type n and press enter, it is going to show me all the Node.js versions that are installed in my system right now that I can switch to without even downloading them again. I can switch to the stable version here. And now I'm on version 12. What if I want to remove a particular, cached Node.js version I have? Let's see how I can do that. I'm typing n help, and let's take a look how to remove something. So there are a couple of commands. Nprune removes all the downloaded versions except the one currently installed, or nrm space version, which removes the particular given download. Let's try these out. So I'm going to remove version 6 and RM6. Now I'm going to type N and C. Version 6 is gone. Okie dokie. Now let's type N and press enter. As you can see, I have 3 Node.js versions installed in my system. And right now, I'm using Node.js version 14. This is the maintenance LTS, long-term support maintenance release. This is the active LTS, and this is the current version. Right now, if I type n prune, it is going to go ahead and delete all the extra versions that I had installed, except for the one that I'm using right now. So now go ahead and let's install the stable version again and switch to it. There you go. See how easy it is? I believe N makes it really easy to manage different versions of Node.js, and there is no extra penalty of using N because there is no shell scripts to be installed, nothing in your bash profile or anything. It just works when you want it to work. So if we take a look at how it works section, N basically downloads a pre-built Node package and installs a single prefix in this particular directory, user local, and then it overwrites the previous version. The downloaded versions are actually kept in a cached folder for reinstalls, so you don't have to download them again and again, and that it makes switching to different Node.js versions really easy. There are a couple more ways to use the downloaded Node.js versions without reinstalling or without switching to that particular version. For that, you can basically use the run or execute command. Let's try it out. If I type node-v, you can see that I am on the version 12 of Node.js. Whereas if I type n, I have Node.js 14.4.0 installed as well. So if I type n run 14.4 and then I give it another command to run node-v, I can see that while I'm using Node.js version 12, I can actually use this particular version to run this particular command. So I'm entered in the Node.js REPL for Node.js version 14.4. And now basically I can run any command I want. And the last thing that I want you to look at is preserving npm. So what happens is a node install actually comes with a packaged npm install. Sometimes it is the node package manager npm version previous to the one you are using right now. But you may wish to preserve an up-to-date latest npm version or npx version using the preserve flag. Your system must have this rsync which is already installed on a Mac OS, which is required by this preserve flag. So let's imagine that you installed the latest npm. And when you switch to Node.js version 8, if you type -p, which is an alias for --preserve, what it is going to do is it is going to install the version 8 of Node.js, but the npm version is going to remain the same. So all of your installed npm libraries are probably going to remain the same. This is sometimes quite useful. So what I do is I export this in preserve npm1 in my bash profile, so I don't have to even type -p. If you want, you can also export this particular preserve npm is equal to 1 variable so that you don't even have to type -p while installing different versions of Node.js. It will just go ahead and preserve whatever npm version you were using. And that is pretty much about it. To summarize it all, you're going to learn Node.js based CLI automation DevTools building in this particular course. You're going to install Node.js. For installing Node.js, you have studied what the release cycle of Node.js looks like, the current version and the 2 long-term support versions. And then we have looked at NVM, Node Version Manager, Node-env, and ASDF Node.js as a couple of node version managers, whereas my favorite, N, which is extremely simple node version manager that you can install or use to install different Node.js VM versions. Go ahead and install Node.js and let's start doing something amazing. Since after npm version 5.2, whenever you install a new version of npm, you will notice that it not only installs npm but another binary as well called npx. For example, if I go ahead and install npm again, you will see that not only npm was installed, but also a binary called npx got installed. So while you already know what npm is for, the node package manager, npx is sort of a node package execution command. So what is npx? If you type npx, you will see that you must supply a command in front of npx. What npx does is, it is actually a runner for npm packages. It executes binaries from npm packages. If we go and take a look at its definition from npmjs.com, it actually executes a particular command either from the local node modules.bin folder or from a central cache. What happens is, by default, npx will check whether a particular command that you are trying to run is available in your path. That is, it is actually a software, it is actually a CLI or a package that is installed in your computer. Or if that package is available in the local project node modules folder where you are running npx, and it will go ahead and execute it. And if the command that you are going to give to npx is not available, it will go ahead and install that particular command prior to the execution. I know this might sound a bit boring. Let's see what this actually means. I often use this CLI called Figlet Cli, which is used to create this, awesome looking text inside of your terminal. To use Figlet CLI, you have to actually install it globally. Let's go ahead and try that. npm install -g for global and Figlet CLI. npm will go ahead and install Figlet CLI globally. Now what I can do is, I can say Figlet, and then I can type any kind of text, and it will print it in this particular textual form. So Figlet and then Awais. And there you go. I'm not always using Figlet CLI. So the next time I use Figlet CLI, the code that I actually installed globally might already be out of date. And I will end up installing it again using the same npm I install global flag, which is kind of redundant. So instead of doing that, what I can do is I can run Figlet CLI right away with npx. To do that, let me first uninstall the CLI. I think I made a typo here, uninstall. Okay, so now if I type Figlet Awais, there's no Figlet command available right now, right? So with npx, I can actually run a particular package right away. I'm typing npx Figlet CLI, and then I'm giving it the text of nodecli.com. What's going to happen here is that npx is going to look for Figlet CLI to see if it is either installed locally or globally. Since it will not find Figlet CLI installed, it is going to go ahead and install Figlet CLI for me. Not only will npx do that, but right after installing Figlet CLI, it is going to give this text to that particular CLI and run it. So in just one command, not only do I install a particular CLI, a particular package, but also run it right away. Let's go ahead and try it. There you go. It installed the CLI, it cached it somewhere, then ran that particular CLI. Now you can see nodecli.com written right in the terminal. Not only this, but you can also give it different flags and different commands. For example, you can actually use dancing font if you want. npx would still make it work. So this is the dancing font which says nodecli.com and whatnot, right? So that's about it. Whenever you want to execute an npm package right away, either local or global or something that you need to install in a temporary cache, you can use npx. You can also direct your users to use npx with your particular CLIs. For example, in Corona CLI, I recommend developers to either install this Corona CLI globally or use npx Corona CLI to run it in one go. Let's go ahead and try it out. npx Corona CLI, and I'm going to limit the output to top 5 countries, and I'm going to sort it by recovered patients. There you go. I got the top 5 countries with most recovered cases of COVID-19. In this video, we are going to create a name CLI. For that, you are going to create an account on github.com and npsjs.com if you don't have one. And then I'm going to call the CLI Awais. For example, this could be your name, something unique that isn't already published on npmjs.com. And then we are going to publish the CLI on npm. So everyone in the world, or maybe an astronaut sitting in the outer space, could probably use the CLI to know who you are. You would be using the CLI by typing in npx Awais in your terminal. So that, and the CLI is basically going to return my name. in my biography, a little bit, a couple of lines about who I am. Okay, let's get started. If you don't have a github.com account, go ahead and sign up, and then you'll be able to click here and create a new repository, or you can just type in repo.new and press enter. Here you can create a new repository. I'm going to call this repository Awais. Get to know Awais via npm. Just run npx Awais, right? I can backtick it. There you go. Okay, so now that I have created this repository, I'm going into my terminal and I'm going to git clone it. cd to Awais. Nice. The next thing is we are going to create an account on npmjs.com. You can definitely go ahead and sign up from their website, but since this is a course about creating CLIs, how about we use npm CLI to create a new user? If you go to npm help, you can see there are a bunch of commands that you can run. One of these commands is add user. So go ahead and type in npm add user. This is if you don't have an npm.js account. Type in a username that is, quite peculiar to you and probably quite unique, so it is not already existing on npm.js. For example, you could have a username, my name is Awais or whatnot, and then type in a password, and finally an email ID which is going to be public. This is the email ID which is going to be used to publish npm packages on npmjs.com. So add your email ID here, and then you just go ahead and press return or press enter, and it will go ahead and create this username for you. And if it doesn't create this username, it will probably give you an error or something that this particular username already exists and you need to create a new user or use different username or whatnot. And when this happens, npm.js is going to send you an email on the email ID you used here. Go ahead and open that email and verify your npm.js account. This is quite important because without this particular step, you're not going to be able to, publish packages to npmjs.com. Okay, I'm just going to cancel this one because I already have an account. Now, if you are logged in, if you have an account, you should be able to check it by npm who am I. And as you can see, I'm already logged in. My username is Ahmed Awais. npmjs.com/Ahmed is how you can probably go to my profile. Okay, now let's start writing code. I'm going to use VS Code for this. So code.word, open this particular folder in VS Code. So whenever you start a project for Node.js CLIs, you create a folder and then you create an index.js file inside of it. And here is where we code for this particular CLI. We want to run this CLI and it should console log my name. This should be pretty simple, right? How about I start with just console logging my name. So that would be Ahmed Awais. Now, how do you think I can run this particular script? I'm not sure. I'm going to open up terminal inside of VS Code, and then I'm going to type in index.js. And I see command not found, index.js. Basically, my shell does not understand what I'm trying to do. It has no command registered against index.js. Maybe if I tell it that I'm going to run a script inside this particular directory and an index.js file is what I'm going to run, then we'll see better results. Well, let's hope for it and press enter. Okay, so now it says permission denied. What is happening? If I type in ls-al to see and list all of the files in this particular directory called Awais, there is an index.js file. And if you take a look at the permissions of this file, I can only read this file. This R basically says that I can only read this file. This file cannot be executed as a shell script. So how about I give it an executable right, a permission to be executed, for example. So let's give this index.js file the permission so that it can be executed. That permission would be X. For that, I'm going to type in chmod plus X and then the name of the file. Now, if I list all of the files, you can see that this particular index.js file is now executable. So I'm going to type in clear to clear the terminal, and let's try it again, /index.js. Okay, syntax error. It hasn't still ran this CLI and it is sort of shouting at us, what is this? What is the syntax? It has an unexpected token or whatnot. What is happening here? What's happening here is basically we are trying to run this particular JavaScript file in our command line, which is a shell, and it can only understand shell scripts. It is trying to understand this as a shell scripting language, not as JavaScript. We need some kind of way to tell our terminal that please run this script with Node.js. For example, if I try to run it with Node.js, let's see what happens. Oh, I get that console log that I had written here, Awais. So we know that Node can run this file, but our terminal, the shell, cannot. How do we fix this? Let's clear this up. To fix this thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add shebang here. So shebang with a funny name is actually a hashtag with a pound sign where you basically tell your terminal that this particular file is going to be run with Node.js. For that, we write this shebang, hashtag with bang sign, and then user without an E. This is a directory in your computer, bin, and then node. So this shebang is basically telling our terminal to run this particular script with Node.js. If this would have been a bash file, we would have written bash here, or Python if this would have been a CLI built with Python. But for this course, I'm going to type in node. So this hashtag and bang sign are called shebang or shebang or hash bang or hash pound sign. And this basically tells our terminal that this particular index.js file should always be executed with Node.js. So I'm going to save this, open up the terminal, and let's run this particular file again. Now I'm not going to use Node, and let's see if this executes. And there you go. Now we are able to execute this script in a command line. But the funny thing is, I don't want to, use /index.js to kind of run the CLI. I want to kind of say, let's say Awais, and it should run this particular CLI. How do I make that happen? There should be a way to define what command should I run or what command should the CLI register, which I could run to print this particular, to run this particular CLI that prints Awais. What I want to do is I want to run, just say Awais, and I want this Awais command to run the CLI. But my terminal basically says that there's no command registered against this, these words Awais. So let's clear this up and think about what we can do here. In the JavaScript ecosystem for npm.js, we actually register and define all of these commands in a file called package.json. So let's go ahead and create package.json file. The package.json file lives in the root directory of our project. It's a JSON file. And the first thing I'm going to give it is the name of our particular CLI here, which is Awais. Make sure that you only use the kebab case here, and everything you write in the name should be lowercase. And then I'm going to give it a version, and I'm going to call it 1.0.0. This is going to be a major version. This is called major, minor, and then the patch version. I'm going to explain these semantic versions later. Now I'm going to define the command that when run should run this particular CLI. For that, we are going to define the bin keyword here. And here is where we define the command. This command here is going to run index.js file in our project here. So this command should be called Awais, right? So now when you install this package and run Awais, you will be able to run index.js file, which console logs my name. Make sense? Let's try it out. Right now, if I write Awais, my terminal shouts at me and says that Awais is not a register command. But before I publish this package to the world out there, I want to test it locally. And for that, I'm going to basically create a local link for this file. For that, I'm going to write an npm link. When I ran npm link, a couple of things happened. First of all, I got all of these warnings about that there is no description or repository or license field in my package.json file that we can always add later. But what really happened was that this package.json file, this package that we have just created, got installed globally in our machine. So basically, npm links installs your package in your computer. It is equivalent to installing a package with npm install hyphen global and then your package name here, right? This is the directory where my node modules are going to be installed. As you can see, there's an Awais directory here in these node modules, global node modules, and then there's an index.js file, which is what we can run by writing this particular command Awais. I know this is extra information, but just so that you know, now you can start running that particular command. Now if I type in Awais and hit enter, it basically runs this particular file, and you can see Ahmed Awais written here. And the fun thing about this is that now this particular package is globally installed and it's already linked to your local code. What I mean by that is, if you go ahead and change something here, for example, software engineer, and run the command again, you will see that the output has changed. So now I can basically do anything with the CLI and test it locally because I have npm linked this particular package globally inside this computer I'm using right now. And if I want to ever uninstall this global package, all I have to do is npm uninstall -g for the global tag and then the package name Awais. Now if I run Awais, it is again going to shout at me saying command not found. So a little bit of a recap here. If you want to locally test your Node CLI, you can go to the root of that directory where you have that package. For us, this is the Awais directory. For you, this is going to be a directory against your name. And just type in npm link. npm link basically links your local package and installs it as a global node module. Now you can run this global module whenever you like. Since I'm using string literals here, the string with backticks, I can basically use a multi-line string here. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to type in my bio. And finally, how about we add some social media links here? Twitter. And then open book for GitHub. Space, GitHub content. And then my blog. I'm just going to add this dude with glasses. Let's call it blog. And so there you go. And finally, I'm going to leave an empty line here. Now, if I run the CLI, the CLI basically is defining who I am, a little bit about my bio, and a couple of links that I can basically click by pressing Command or Option Alt in my computer. Okay, our CLI looks great. I'm going to go ahead and commit our CLI as the first version to GitHub, just for the keepsake, so I don't lose this code. Now let's go ahead and publish this CLI on npm. For that, make sure that you are logged in with npm who am I. So as you can see, it prints out my username for npmjs.com, which means I'm logged in. And then I just need to write in npm publish. And there you go. I have published a CLI called Awais with a major version 1.0. All of this information basically tells me that all of these files were uploaded, and now Awais CLI basically lives on npm. Let's go ahead and check if that is actually true. A shortcut to do that is by typing npm.im/ the name of your package. And this will take you to npmjs.com/package/Awais, which is actually the link where your package gets published. And as you can see, the last publish was about a minute ago. And here's the CLI with no readme found, no keywords whatsoever, which we are going to fix in the next couple of videos. Now I'm going to uninstall the local version we just installed using npm link. I can verify that by typing in Awais, and as you can see, there is no command called Awais right now. So now that our CLI is published on npmjs.com, what we can do is we can basically use the package name, which is Awais, which is also denoted here in the URL, and run this CLI using npx. Let's try it out. npx Awais. npx is going to go ahead and install this particular CLI and then execute it. So there you go. It's saying Awais, my bio, and the links we had written. And that's pretty much about it. This is how you create your first CLI and publish it on npmjs.com. Anyone could use npx to run your CLI right away.